for FedEx. I worked for FedEx as a a specialist. And then after that, I was like, hey, I need to finish my school. And so I went to University of Texas at Dallas. I moved back. I moved back and forth, back and forth. I mean, it's amazing. And so no one in my family had graduated from high school. So I was like, this will be a first. So I want to be a first. And so I went to UTD and I finished my bachelor's degree in psychology. And I did like most people did. I started off in business, didn't know what I wanted to do. I went to physical therapy, and then psychology happened because I was learning myself. I was going through so many things emotionally growing up. My mom was, how would I say, she was addicted to drugs at the time. She was doing cocaine and weed and everything. And my dad was a chronic alcoholic, and he used to beat women, domestic violence, basically. And I always was fighting to get out of that environment. I knew that there was something greater for me. I knew there was something outside of that small wall of my city. And so I just said, I'm going to create a different life. So going to Dallas actually just changed everything for me. It gave me a different outlook. I was so used to the military and seeing different people, different cultures. So when I came to Dallas, it was like a mix. It's like a melting pot. Everybody was like, hey, how you doing? Friendly and wanted to help out. And what I realized is that the relationships that I had attained helped me to learn myself even more. And I had people that when I couldn't do for myself, they just took me in. And I didn't know what it was at the time. And I was taking all type of jobs. I worked for temp agencies. I valet cars. I was a front desk person at French Riviera Spa. I mean, I did it all. Like, I've done every job to survive. And I met this one lady, her name was Linda, who exposed me to travel and saying, you can do it. Like, sometimes you just take a word of a person to say, you can do it. And she just showed me so many different things. Like, besides the truck, because when I was in the military, I didn't deploy. I've only did Fort Lee, AIT. I did Fort Campbell, Fort Jackson. So I never got the experience to do what everybody else did. Up until I became a federal agent, which was one of my dreams as a kid. I was like, I'm going to be the best at what I'm going to do. And eventually, I wound up being able to do it. So.
All right, let's go back a little bit. That's kind of broad. Mm-hmm. Let's just take it off in chunks, okay?
I have so many chunks that you would have to break. My life is a a roller coaster ride.
All right, so where did you grow up in New Orleans?
I grew up in we have wards in New Orleans. It's called Third Ward. Well, I call it Zion City. It's a small area close to uptown New Orleans. That's where I was raised. And it was mostly minority. Low income, a lot of different things going on for us, drugs and, people just trying to get by. But the love that was there is basically what got me through during that time.
So when did you start looking into joining the military? Was there something that happened in your life that
yes.
you were like, now it's time, I got to go? Or
yes. Being around the drugs and the domestic violence and the other type of things, I knew that there was something greater. Even though I was good in school, I was an All-American in high school. I played every sport in high school. I felt like I always had to prove myself. And I was like, hey, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to be the best. If it's to be, it's up to me. So I'm going to do what I have to do. And so just so happened I met a counselor. And just so happened I have a master's degree in counseling. She kind of inspired me. And she knew what I was going through. She would talk to me all the time, and she told me something about emancipation. And I was like, well, what's emancipation? Because, I know I told my mom about doing military. She was like, nope, you can't go. Like, you're going to stay here. You're going to, do what you have to do. But she was closed-minded. She didn't finish high school. She finished high school, but she didn't work. She didn't have, other ambitions. I didn't really see a lot of big things with my mom. And so she says, well, if you file emancipation, you could sign for yourself. I was 17 years old. And I was like, wow. So I filed this paperwork, and I was able to sign up in March of 1993. And I actually went into a delayed entry program where actually I was able to see the military before I even got in. So I signed up in Louisiana National Guard. I've been in every branch of the Army. The Louisiana Guard was actually in Chalmette area. And that's where I started my foundation. And I started meeting people. And then all of a sudden, I was like, hey, you can get this job, on this base. Well, you'll have to go reserve in order for you to be able to get this full-time job. I was like, okay. So I signed up full-time. I worked, my MOS was 92 Alpha, which was logistics. It was a 76 Charlie, so I guess that's telling my age because the MOS has changed. But I did that for a while. And then active duty came afterwards because I almost had a domestic violence situation myself, and I wanted to get away and be away from where I was.
Were you married?
No, I'm not married. No, not married, no kids at all.
So what happened in your life that introduced domestic violence in a new way?
It started out young, just angry with life, wanting to tear away from all of the things that I was seeing growing up. I lived from house to house to house when I was growing up. I had no stability. I lived with my grandmother. Most of my time, she built my foundation in church, and that's how I actually learned who God was. But I didn't really know who he was until now in the age that I am now. But I'm glad she helped me build a foundation because that's what kept me strong through the time. Then I moved with an aunt and stayed with an aunt. She was going through her own issues. And then I moved to my godparents, which I grew up with 4 boys in the household, tomboy, didn't know anything about girly type stuff. And everything was tough love, don't cry. You can't really speak about what's going on in your life. And it just had me bottled up. And I used to fight all the time. And I was just angry with everything. And so I played sports was my way out. And so I was like, God, what is it? There's got to be something better than this. And so when I signed up to go to the military, another girl that I was talking to and that I was playing sports with was going through the same thing. And so I found out that I can do buddy system. So buddy system is when you sign up with someone else, and then you can go in as a PV2 instead of a private. You go in as a higher rank. So I've always been the person to try to see how I can do better. And so she actually had our own personal problems, and as a result, both of us signed up together, and that's how I wound up getting to the military. So just that not stability, not having stability in your life, not knowing where your life was going, knowing that there was something greater in life, and just want to get out and do it.
What happened when you got out?
When I got out, it was hard. Because you was used to getting up every morning. Someone told you what to do to get up. Someone told you where to go. You had this really sense of direction because I was so not structured. Even when I was in the military, I used to fight then and taught a lot of lessons with KP duty and a lot of push-ups and running. So I said, okay, I'm going to just stay the course. I'm just going to go ahead and do what I have to do to finish. And so once I finished that, I said, well, what is the next job that I could do that's easy? What would be the easy thing that I could do that I could excel? So I said, if I go become a police officer, I'm going to work for the post office. That was just a natural thing. That's what most people told me to do. And so I said, okay, I know this training. I do push-ups, sit-ups. I can do this. And so I said, okay, I'm going to be a police officer. So I became a police officer right after getting out of the military.
Did you go home to New Orleans to be a police officer?
Yes, I was a NOPD police officer for a couple years. And actually, while I was in training, I had another incident that occurred. My grandmother died while I was in police academy training. And she was my rock. She was the person that showed me who, the foundation, and she was the first entrepreneur of our family, actually. And she didn't have a high school graduation. She showed me a lot of things that other people couldn't really show me. So I felt like I lost everything. And what made me stay the course is I was taking a driver's test. We was in the midst of our driver's test in the academy. And they told me that I had to go to the hospital. My grandmother was in the hospital, that she had suffered pneumonia. And they say, well, keep driving. I want you to take your test first. So I kind of knew something was wrong, but I really didn't know what was wrong. So I was so mad about it. I started driving real fast. I was just, because you can't stop when you're actually driving. So in actuality, I finished it, and then they sent me off to the hospital. And then my grandmother she was at her end. She was bleeding through the mouth, and it was just hard to do, but I just knew that she was proud of me. I knew that she wanted me to keep going. I know that she would be proud of me if I continued. And so I actually continued and just as a result of it, I finished the police academy, and I won the driving award that day. And they honored me in a police academy, and I explained to them what happened. And it was just a hard time, but I actually got through a lot. That taught me a lot.
Tell me about the time that you came to Texas.
Oh, time I came to Texas was after working for the police department for a while. And as I explained to you before, I was getting shot at, and I was running, and it was really hard in New Orleans to be a police officer. I'm pretty sure a lot of people know that. It's really busy with activity, but loving people. I mean, I love my city. And but I knew that I was tied to not doing better financially. And at the time in Dallas, there were opportunities for me to go to Plano Police and Frisco. There was areas that really needed female officers at the time, and it was almost $20,000 more than what I was making. So I said, okay. A friend of mine said, well, why don't you just come on, just try it? And I did. I went to Plano. And I was hired on as a Plano police officer. And then I had an issue that happened with Plano. I was in an academy where there was a bunch of different organizations within one at this police academy. And coming from the city that I was coming from, no one loved NOPD officers at that time. There was a lot of things that was happening at the time in New Orleans, so you came across as a bad stigma. But I knew I was a great cop. I knew I had saved a lot of lives, and I've done a lot of things, and I was really proud of what I did. But I was told to not go through the academy. But I didn't listen. And I went through the academy, and I had some issues with transition. I was moving from New Orleans to Dallas at the time. And they told me that I couldn't stay up in class. And I was in school. And it's just like all these different little obstacles that was happening. And they kicked me out the police academy. So I'm like, okay, well, what do I do? What do I do? And the guy who was actually over at academy told me that I would never work in law enforcement again. So I went through a little bit of that, and so I went back to school. Some said, finish school, Christine, because if all else fails, you have to stay the course. You have to finish school. So I went to University of Texas. I finished school. I worked for CPS as an investigator. So I got a chance to touch a lot of lives with that. I learned a lot about kids and helping organizations to give resources to people that didn't know or had domestic violence. So basically, God was sending my life in the opposite direction to help people of the things that I already was going through. And so I did that for a while, but it was hard. It was worse than being a police officer at the time because you saw so many gruesome things and kids being neglected and things that happened to them that was beyond their control. See, in a police officer, you go there and you handle the situation, but these were kids that couldn't do for themselves. And it would go home. I would go home actually livid, just depressed, and it was just too much. It was a lot of paperwork. So then next, I come to Houston. I become a security specialist for FedEx and travel back and forth doing that. But then they put me over 15 hubs. I had to drive my own car. It was just overwhelming. So I was like, okay, what else could I do in law enforcement? So then I said, I want to be the greatest at what I do. I had already told myself when I was a kid, whatever I do, I wanted to do the top thing that I can do. And I became a special agent for the government. So I felt like that was just a major accomplishment. And at the time, I had just received my master's degree. I actually went to Prairie View here in Houston. I want to say Prairie View. And the reason why I'm so tight with the Prairie View situation is that Prairie View started in Dallas. And I used to drive 4 hours every weekend to get my degree. There was a program that was set in the Dallas area, and it ended. And I had already finished like 15 hours of classes, and they told me I couldn't transfer. And so I was like, well, what do? You have to stay the course. So I used to drive from Dallas to Houston every weekend. So I lived in Houston a couple of times, and Houston was just wearing on me, and it was just closer to New Orleans to travel. So then that's how I wound up coming to Houston. But
So tell me how you found out about Grace After Fire. What was going on?
too many things was going on. I was being evicted. I was struggling with paying some bills. I had just gotten in a car accident. I lost my car. And so life was in shambles. I had just got laid off from a job, reduction in force from a new career I started doing as a project manager. I had been on unemployment trying to figure out what else my next course was going to be, which I had started to do real estate. So I'm just putting all these irons in the fire. So I go to this agency called Dress for Success. And I met this wonderful lady. Her name is Alicia. And we had talked about different things. We cried, and I listened to her story. And then listening to her story kind of got me to saying, oh, well, my story is important too. So I was like, hey, is there other organizations that can help me out at the time? And she said, yes, there's an organization called Grace After Fire. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. Grace After Fire? That's what I'm going through. The fire, Grace After Fire. So she gave me the information, and I called, and I immediately felt like this is where I was needing to be. I had been through 15 different organizations as a veteran. I lived at the YWCA shelter in Fort Worth when I first got evicted in 2014 when I lost my job. So I had so many different organizations that I went through, but when I came here, just the love that I received immediately. Alicia had told me that there wasn't funding at some other places. And then maybe if I call Grace After Fire, they'll find some resources. And then first I talked to Mia, who is the president of the company. And there was something about like when you talk to a person and you could just feel the love. And she constantly stayed on the phone with me. She said, I'm going to help you. And that just gave me the hope. Like I knew at that point, I felt it. And I didn't know anything about her story or no one else's story, but I learned over time, all the organizations that I went to, somebody had a story. Catholic Charity, Salvation Army, all of them have helped me. Long story. I could write a book on how to survive as a veteran. But Grace After Fire has been true to my heart because I found hope when I didn't feel like things were going to actually go the way that I needed to. And it happened at a time where I had talked to them about a year ago and they wasn't able to help me. But when I had a temp assignment probably about a month ago, that was supposed to be 2 weeks, and it wound up being 5 weeks. And I was at my job, and I had just got evicted in January. And a friend of mine had let me stay in a hotel. And I stayed in a hotel for about a month. And I'm just constantly asking God, like, I've done it all. I've done everything, God. I'm doing the right things. I'm trying to stay the course. I'm not trying to go down the wrong path. What is it? Send me somebody. Give me some type of sign. Let me know that it's going to work out. So while I was at work, the hotel called and says, you got to come move your things out. That, we no longer, you no longer can stay here because you can't afford to stay here. And I was at the temp job. And so I had to humble myself. And I said, well, what am I going to do? So I get on the phone, I call Alicia. And Alicia says, hey, call Grace After Fire. I know you called before, but they may be able to help you out. And I had talked to her. And then I called a couple of people that I met over time. And they just prayed with me. And then I had all this stuff in my car. I was actually just like leaving. And then a friend called me on the phone and she says, hey, I just had a friend that moved out. And I know you're going through some things that you could come stay at a house that I'm no longer renting. And then there was no refrigerator, no nothing. There were they had a shell but didn't have anything. So I called and I was able to meet. And they gave me a refrigerator here at Grace After Fire. I was able to get clothes. I was able to get resources by email to call other people. Like I said, I just felt like at that point that God's know where to take you. He knows nothing happens by a chance. I don't believe that anything that's happened to me has been by chance. And all of the things is really been the test for here today. I pray for this situation today. When I met Tanner, I said, I would love to be a platform so I can tell people what I've been through, to show other veterans or other women that there is hope. And I know that we can't capture everything in a short period of time, but when you ask him for it, I realized that the foundation that my grandmother started me out with made me push towards the relationships and networking with other people. And now that I see, by being in the military, going through and persevering, that there's other women that I feel that I can help through Grace After Fire, because the little bit of hope that they gave me, I think that I would be able to be resourceful in helping them. And I stayed here in Houston. I tried to do the best that I could. I wasn't even supposed to be here today. But I realized that God says, be still. Because I've been trying to get stability in my life for a long time. I moved around a whole lot. I've been through a whole lot. I've seen a whole lot. But God has put favor in an organization. Like, you never know who's going to help you. You never know who's going to reach their hand out to touch you. You never know that you might meet a person and they say, well, hey, I see you shining. I see the light that you have. There is hope. And that's just, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Take your time.
Words can't express what I've been through this last year. Again, I said I had over 15, 17 different organizations. I can name them. But I feel like this last opportunity that I've had has helped me to propel me to do my best work. The new chapters of my life, to honoring the other veterans and people through what's happened to me, to let them know that there is a God, that there is help, there is people that want to help you. And a lot of times when you're going through, you feel pride. See, when you was in the military, you learn to have pride. You learn that you have to be tough. And there were some times you couldn't cry, that you had to just persevere. And I think what switched me to the Army, and the reason why I wanted to do the Army, first of all, I had a family member that was in the military. And I see him do great, but you used to always see these commercials say, be all you can be. And I just know the rest of my life is going to be being all I can be. Because he got some great things in store for me beyond this today. And then we have another quote called Army Strong. See, God doesn't do what he do because you want it. He do because he already have a path. It's by design. This today is by design. I was crying in my house and I said, God, I want to do this because I don't feel like I've persevered. I don't feel like I've done anything to be an asset to anybody else. But I feel like by doing this, I'm going to show some young girls, some women who feel like she can't, there's nothing, that there's no way to get out of the situation, that there is. There is a way to get out. And going to these different organizations, talking to people, networking, just being transparent, basically. We don't want to tell people our downfalls. It's called the backstage of your life. Because when we always want to be front stage, like right here. We want to be good. We want to smile. We want to show people we made it through. But even in the storm, you have to praise him in the steps. You have to praise him through the process. Because if you don't, you will never get to where you need to go. And I know this might be off your questions, but I am so honored to do this.
You're welcome.
I am so grateful. Because today is my starting steps. I have been praying and asking God just to show me Show me how I can be better. How can I be great for you, for other people? How can I step out of myself and be more you? They say more of him and less of me. I pray that whatever this is shows more of him than me as a person, because I am not accountable for none of what I'm doing right now. I'm just not. He says, be still and know that I am God. And once you learn that, you can cast all your worries, all your fears, everything that you worry about. He's there.
Well, be still so you know when he speaks.
He says, relax, I got it. You know, you think that you don't have me. You think that, you know, you lost everything. You think that you got through all these degrees where your family never accomplished that. You got to these jobs and then you lost your jobs. You lost your relationships. You lost your mother. You lost your grandmother. You lost everything that you felt. But I'm the legacy. You know, I can't give up. I never will stop. The perseverance is what it is. And I got online and I used a nickname that my dad gave me, Christy Love. And just so happened, like I said, nothing happened by chance. I'm starting to do speaking, and I use the letters CLUV, and it's changing lives and understanding victory. How ironic is that? Like I said, nothing happens by chance. This is not by chance. And I believe that all of the things that we're doing, these ladies, being transparent and giving you this information, is going to change somebody else's life.
What do you think about the women veterans?
You want a minute?
Oh, yeah, it's fine. I'm good.
Whoa. It's all right.
I forgot.
I got
I didn't know what's into the chair.
All right. Yeah, not into
Yeah.
Yep, just one more question. Okay. So tell me what you think about the women veterans here in Houston.
I think they're extraordinary. I think they're phenomenal. I think that they're powerful and they're strong. Because I've listened to a lot of stories, like I said, by going through all the organizations as well as Grace After Fire. The time that I was coming to get closed, there was veterans that's outside that we talked and we shared our stories. And just to see veterans constantly persevere, it's just amazing. Like, you feel like you're the only one. You feel like you're the only person that's going through, and you're not. And as long as we band together and put our hands together and figure out, like, how to help each other, we will. And we'll keep doing what we need to do to show other people how strong you need to be. Yeah, being a part of the military, I would say that it's been the best decision I ever made in my life. It saved my life, actually. I could have been into I could have been on drugs. I could have been, suffering, domestic violence. I could have been not even worried about pursuing anything better in my life. But by taking chances, the military actually showed me that, moving from this post to this post, we don't look at it at that time. We don't look at the times where we've done, when you're sitting doing KP duty, or you're doing, I was in a communications unit. Even though I was supply, I was in the communications unit. And we used to go to field all the time. And you couldn't take baths for like a week. And you couldn't, you had to like survive and dig foxholes and stuff like that. And you never thought that all the things that you were doing was preparing you for life. It was actually showing you that that you have to go overcome. All of that. I mean, you preparing for battle. It's called training. You're in it. And that's what I think we all have in common. The Navy, Army, Air Force, we all have this training. We all have this code. We all have this work ethic, this hard work ethic that we have, the love that we share for each other. That's what I think that's great about being a Houston veteran, New Orleans veteran, and just a veteran in itself.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking.
Thank you.